The Zern Dominion was built on conquest. Planet after planet, species after species, they all fell. Some surrendered before the warships arrived. Some fought and were crushed. The Zern weren't just an empire. They were a warning etched across galaxies. Resist, and you vanish. But Earth was different. The first time Earth's signal was intercepted, it came from an old satellite barely working. A broken song in the void, filled with chaos, war broadcasts, music with violent rhythms, movies about humans killing each other, screaming sports commentators, laughter mixed with explosions. To the Zern, it was the sound of a species either completely unhinged or dangerously evolved. Still, protocol was protocol. The Earth report landed on the table of High Commander Kothvar. He glanced at the translation logs and snorted. Primitive language, carbon-based, no interstellar travel. An easy harvest, he muttered, not even bothering to read the last pages. He approved the assault with one swipe of his claw. 3 dreadships were dispatched. 2 weeks later they vanished. No message, no signal, no debris. That had never happened before. The Zern don't panic, but they take patterns seriously, so they sent 10 more dreadships. This time, they armed them with planetary erasers, weapons that could melt a moon in under a minute. They loaded the most elite war breeds. The Mind Piercers, the Atom Flayers, the Claw Lords, all gone. No trace, no distress beacon. Just silence. Now there was a silence in the war chamber, too. Every general's eyes stared at the dark hologram of Earth. High Commander Kothvar's jaw clicked as he watched. "They are not advanced," he hissed. "We scanned them. They are divided. They pollute their own skies. They fight over skin colors and oil. But they also made nuclear fire before discovering deep space," muttered a younger general, "and they laugh while watching death." There was a pause. Kothvar ignored him. "This time we go ourselves." He brought the Maul, the Zern's largest dreadnought, a floating city of annihilation, 50,000 war units, cannons that could melt continents. Inside the ship's war bridge, they played the Earth's signals again. Laughter, explosions, madness, screaming crowds cheering as machines raced in circles. Music that sounded like rage made rhythm. "What is this emotion?" one of the Zern analysts asked. "Why are they smiling while destroying each other?" Another responded, "It's entertainment." The Zern didn't understand, but they didn't have to. They just had to destroy. The Maul slipped into Earth's orbit without resistance. "Primitive," Kothvar whispered. "No planetary shield, no orbital defense. Their atmosphere is still filthy. They don't even have a unified world command." "Deploy drop pods," he ordered. 5,000 pods shot from the Maul, burning streaks across the sky. They landed in cities: New York, Tokyo, Rio, Lagos. No resistance, just terrified humans filming the invasion with small glass boxes in their hands. The first attacks began. That's when things started going wrong. At first it was simple sabotage. Communications jammed, not by Earth's tech, but by strange electromagnetic storms that appeared out of nowhere. Then the AI cores of their warbots started glitching, refusing commands. Some turned on themselves. Then came the humans. Not soldiers, not governments, just people. People who showed up in homemade armor, wielding weapons made from kitchen parts and scrapyard tech. Some had guns from centuries ago. Some had baseball bats with nails. Some wore old gas masks with duct tape across the mouth that said, "Come and take it." And they didn't fight like any enemy the Zern had seen. They weren't organized. They didn't retreat. They didn't fear death. They laughed while fighting. One squad of Zern warriors were ambushed by a gang of humans in an old subway tunnel. They weren't military. They were just survivors. One wore a shirt that said, "I told you aliens were real." Another was blasting a speaker strapped to his chest that screamed something called metal. They tore through the Zern, not because they were stronger, but because they didn't care about dying. They cared about killing the invaders more than they cared about surviving. One of the Zern officers was caught alive. Before his execution, a human girl, no older than 16, looked him in the eye and said, "We don't fear death here. We made horror a hobby." The transmission from the mall cut off an hour later. The ship vanished from orbit. Earth's skies were quiet again. But the stars? The stars whispered. Another species had just learned the reason no one ever came back from Earth. The stars across Sector 9 dimmed the moment Earth was blacklisted in the Dominion's Grand Archive. One word glowed red beside the planet's name. Untouchable. No explanation. No warning. Just a sealed fate. The decision came from the High Circle themselves. Elders so ancient and powerful that even High Commander Kothvar answered to them. The Circle had only declared 2 other planets untouchable in history. One had collapsed into madness after ingesting their own god tech. The other? No one spoke its name anymore. Now Earth joined them. But silence is a fragile thing, especially in a galaxy fueled by conquest and arrogance. Not all species believed the stories. Some refused to accept that a pre-warp civilization could destroy not 1, not 2, but 3 full invasions of the Zern's finest. Among the doubters was Ka Thulon, warlord of the Threx Confederacy. Unlike the Zern, the Threx didn't believe in large armies or heavy weapons. They believed in surgical conquest, stealth, infiltration, psychological warfare. "If the Zern failed," Cathulon declared, "it is only because they used brute force. Earth must be cracked open with subtlety." He sent a team of 13 infiltrators, genetically altered to mimic humans. Each one was embedded with neural cloaks and memory shields. They were to blend in, learn Earth's secrets, and report back. They landed quietly, no massive ships or flashy attacks. Just 13 shadows dropped across the planet, into cities, towns, and even a remote farmhouse. The reports began a week later, but they weren't what Cathulon expected. Infiltrator 12, who landed in a Midwestern American town, reported being adopted by a group of strangers within hours. They gave him food, shelter, and clothes, despite his awkward speech and odd behavior. One night, while he tried to decode their primitive systems, they invited him to something called barbecue. He described it in confusion. They cooked animal flesh over fire, laughed, fed me more than I could eat. One called me brother after only knowing me 2 days. He sounded disoriented. Infiltrator 6, placed in a dense urban zone, had a different problem. She'd been taken in by a gang, not military, not official, but they carried more weapons than a Threx outpost. Instead of hiding, she found herself riding in armored trucks through burning neighborhoods. The gang leader told her, "We don't trust the government, we trust each other." She noted, "They prepare for war even when there is none. They celebrate survival like it's a sport. They think being paranoid is smart." Day by day, more reports came in. Infiltrator 9 tried to provoke violence in a school by introducing chaos into the power grid. But the children laughed. The entire class turned it into a game. One hacked the building's server and played heavy music from every intercom speaker. Another created a short film about AI going rogue and shared it on something called TikTok. It had 10 million views by sunset. "Earthlings weaponize absurdity," he reported. "They defy fear with humor. They don't break, they mock." By the second week, only 7 infiltrators remained active. 3 had gone completely silent. 2 had assimilated into human life so thoroughly They refused to return. They claimed to have found meaning. One fell in love. Infiltrator 4 sent a final message before vanishing. These creatures are not logical. They are not stable. They are driven by emotion, raw, chaotic, unpredictable. One moment they cry, the next they make art with their tears. Then they build weapons that could end their species, just in case. They survive not because of unity, but because they thrive in madness. Earth isn't dangerous because of its power. It's dangerous because of its people. Back in the Threx Confederacy, Cathalon played the recordings in disbelief. He watched as humans danced in flames, made jokes during disasters, turned every tragedy into a meme, and laughed in the face of extinction. Then he saw one clip that froze his blood. A small boy, no older than 10, holding a broken Zern helmet. Into the camera, the boy said, "Come again, aliens." "We're waiting." The child smiled. And behind him, people cheered. It wasn't military, it was just Earth waiting. The report ended there, and Cathalon understood why the Zern never came back. Because Earth wasn't a planet. It was a trap. A world of beautiful insanity where fear doesn't work, logic fails, and even death loses its sting. And worst of all, they like it that way. Word of Earth began to spread, not through formal channels, not in grand council meetings, but in whispers, in back alley markets of Orion's spine, in the drinking halls of asteroid smugglers, in pirate radio broadcasts bouncing between wormholes. The message was always the same. Don't go to Earth. But for every warning, there were those who thought it was all lies. Tall tales told by defeated warlords to hide their shame. Stories made up to scare the young. After all, how could a planet with no planetary fleet, no space-time weapons, and a population still arguing about flat Earth and pineapple on pizza defeat some of the deadliest forces in the known universe? That's when the bounty hunters started arriving. Not to attack, to investigate. One of them, a hybrid mercenary named Gris Varn, was known for turning myths into trophies. He once skinned a fireworm from the moons of Geras and wore its spine as a belt. When he heard of Earth, he didn't laugh like the others. He just nodded once and said, "All right then." He landed in northern Canada, of all places, remote, snow-covered, and quiet. He expected desolation. He found Tim Hortons. Within hours, he was eating something called a double-double and getting into an argument about hockey with a man named Doug who called him Buddy after almost throwing a punch. No weapons, no aggression, just passive sarcasm and infinite politeness wrapped in thermal jackets. He radioed back. "They're weird. Even their rage is friendly." He wasn't the only one. Dozens of other mercs tried to infiltrate, document, and escape. Some stayed in America, others wandered into Siberia, India, Brazil. The results were the same. No violence, not at first. Instead, Earth got into their heads. One hunter, an elite assassin from the Axor Syndicate, was last seen live-streaming himself reacting to YouTube prank videos while eating a thing called Flamin' Hot Cheetos. The video was titled, "Alien Assassin Tries Earth Snacks, Regrets Everything," and had 47 million views before the stream cut off mid-bite with a choked scream. He was never seen again. But Earth wasn't just unpredictable, it was watching. Somehow, some way, Earth's network, its vast web of satellites, phones, social media, and surveillance, began to notice the outsiders. Not governments, not armies, just people. A teenager in Jakarta caught a Threx infiltrator shapeshifting on camera and posted it online. The clip was dismissed as CGI until experts tore it apart and confirmed it had no render glitches. It became the #1 trending video across every global platform under the title, "Area 51? Nah, they're already here." That's when things turned. Earthlings didn't panic. They didn't run. They started hunting back, not with ships or lasers, but with curiosity, obsession. content creation. Entire communities formed overnight. Forums, subreddits, Discord groups, all dedicated to exposing and documenting aliens. Within days, thousands of humans were exchanging footage, theories, and locations. They weren't afraid. They were excited. One man in Texas built a bunker filled with alien tracking tech made from an old microwave, Wi-Fi extenders, and a Roomba. He claimed it worked. "It beeped when my neighbor sneezed funny. That's proof enough for me." The aliens were not prepared for this kind of war. This wasn't strategy or force. It was the chaos of billions of unfiltered, unpredictable minds turning the alien threat into entertainment. One infiltrator recorded a note before self-destructing. "They don't understand scale. They don't need unity. They weaponize their flaws. Their insanity is collective. Their stupidity is adaptive. They absorb everything. Every threat becomes a meme. Every invader becomes content. We are not facing a species. We are facing a virus made of minds." And he was right, because Earth had no central defense, no global leadership, no master plan, just 7 billion minds, each one a little broken, a little brilliant, a little dangerous in its own way. And worse, they were learning. The more species came, the more Earth evolved. A group of humans in Berlin reverse-engineered a plasma grenade just by watching it explode. Kids on a Discord server decoded alien broadcast patterns and pranked a Zern patrol ship with Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up." When the ship exploded, no one even blinked. The comments were brutal. "Alien noobs got rickrolled into oblivion. GG." So Earth waited again, silent on the outside, but boiling underneath, not with fear, with laughter, with madness, with the sick, twisted joy of a species that had nothing left to lose and everything to prove, because now the galaxy was watching. And Earth? Earth was just getting started. By the time Earth's name reached the inner worlds of the Galactic Accord, it wasn't just a backwater rumor. It was legend, a cursed word, a warning mothers whispered to their spawn at night. Misbehave, and the humans will find you. But fear is a tricky thing. In some, it breeds caution. In others, curiosity. And in the case of the Galactic Accord, composed of dozens of once-warring species who had finally established peace, it bred a dangerous kind of interest. They didn't believe in myths. They believed in data. So the Accord voted, after much debate, to send a peace envoy to Earth. Not to invade, not to infiltrate, but to observe, to understand. A diplomatic mission backed by science, culture, and the assumption that humans were simply misunderstood. The ship they sent was called the Valerian's Grace. It was sleek, silver, and covered in banners of peace, broadcasting harmless frequencies in every known language. It never made it to the surface. It was shot down by a garage in Oklahoma. The man responsible, Dale Henderson, age 54, was a retired engineer, conspiracy theorist, and part-time raccoon rehabilitator. He'd rigged his barn roof with salvaged parts from a crashed Zern pod and a microwave oven. When asked how he managed to create a fully functioning orbital strike cannon, he just said, "Watched a lot of Mythbusters, and I was bored." The ship crash-landed in a Kansas cornfield. No casualties, just confusion. The humans arrived before the military. Farmers, teens, a podcast host. One guy who ran a paranormal YouTube channel and streamed the entire recovery with a GoPro taped to his dog. The aliens were met with chili, lawn chairs, and a 6-hour interrogation conducted entirely over cornhole matches and Bud Light. Their official statement later said, "We intended a diplomatic dialogue. Instead, we were offered something called a Jell-O shot and asked if we believed in Bigfoot." Back in the Accord, the reaction was divided. Half the council wanted to cut all ties immediately. The other half believed this bizarre chaos was proof of intelligence in another form. It's cultural misalignment, they argued. We must adapt to their communication style. So they sent another group. This time, not a delegation of scholars and diplomats, but artists, entertainers, and social scientists. Within hours of landing, one of them had gone viral on TikTok for breakdancing in an alien costume in Times Square. Another was spotted at a Vegas nightclub getting drunk on tequila and ranting about how humans taste sound. The third was arrested in Florida for wrestling an alligator after losing a bet. Again, no one died. But the footage spread. Every species in the Accord watched in horror as the so-called primitive planet bent its visitors to its will, not with weapons, not with force, but with culture, absurd, insane, and dangerously addictive Earth culture. Because Earth didn't fight by destroying you. It broke your sense of reality. By week 2, one of the Accord delegates had started a band. Another refused to leave, claiming he found inner peace in a McDonald's playplace. One disappeared entirely after discovering Reddit. And still, Earth had no idea these were official missions. To them, it was just more weird tourists. Then came the glitch. The Accord's deep space monitors picked up a signal, a backdoor frequency riding Earth's outgoing transmissions. At first, they assumed it was another human meme injection, or a prank broadcast. But then the data started corrupting their archives that had stood untouched for millennia. The virus was simple, elegant, lethal. It mimicked Earth's digital behavior, chaotic, redundant, self-replicating. It didn't destroy, it infiltrated. It embedded itself in logic cores and AI systems, forcing them to play old sitcoms, loop cat videos, or shut down entirely while quoting Nicolas Cage. They traced it back to a source. Not a government. Not a supercomputer. Just a server in someone's basement in Detroit, running 24/7 Minecraft mods and live streaming Cooking with Aliens episodes on Twitch. The creator? A 15-year-old named Malik, who thought he was just coding a funny filter for his friends. The virus had escaped containment through sheer accidental genius. By the time the Accord tried to contain it, it was too late. It had already reached over 300 worlds. Systems crashed. AI assistants began speaking in Valley Girl accents. One planet's entire navigation system rerouted their ships into endless loops because Siri said so. Back on Earth, Malik got a scholarship offer from MIT and a threat from a secret government agency in the same week. He chose to ignore both and went back to his server. The message was now clear. Earth wasn't resisting the galaxy. Earth was infecting it. One meme, one TikTok, one shared moment of lunacy at a time. And the galaxy was running out of immunity. The planet Virex 3 had never known war. For nearly 2,000 cycles, the Virexians had lived in pure logic, emotion-regulated harmony, and efficient societal order. Crime was extinct. Their AI governed decisions with perfect neutrality. Their culture prized data above all. Poetry had been archived and forgotten. Humor was a virus long since cured. They were the shining example of what post-organic civilization could become. So naturally, they were the first to fall apart completely once Earth memes hit their data grid. It started innocently, just a packet leak from a diplomatic server. A low-resolution image of a frog sitting on a log with the caption, "When you croak, but existential dread still hits." No context, no translation, and yet it triggered something in the Virexian neural net. A glitch? A curiosity? A laugh? No one could say. But from that moment, Virex 3 began to unravel. By day 3, their World Info Hub had dedicated a full terabyte of memory to something called dad jokes. By day 5, their city planning AI froze for 16 hours after encountering the phrase Florida man. It simply refused to resume operations, citing the event log as philosophically incompatible with structured existence. And by day 7, their emotion regulators collapsed entirely. The Virexian population began doing something previously unseen in generations. They felt unfiltered, erratic, human-like feelings. They laughed, cried, some rioted. A few began wearing fanny packs, ironically. One began sculpting miniature figurines of Danny DeVito out of nutrient paste. He claimed it came to him in a dream, riding a velociraptor made of Doritos. The Virexian Council panicked. They tried to isolate the planet, shut down all galactic networks, seal off every comm node. But it was too late. The memes had embedded. And worse, some Virexians wanted more. A group calling themselves the Cult of Cringe hacked into the planet's mainframe and began projecting Earth content onto city walls. Not art, not philosophy. Vine compilations. One video simply featured a man getting hit in the groin repeatedly with different household objects, overlaid with what they later identified as sound effects from SpongeBob. That single clip caused the great collapse of Sector A-42, where 30% of the population began speaking only in sarcastic phrases and quoting ancient YouTube videos as scripture. Back on Earth, humans remained blissfully unaware. They were too busy arguing on Twitter over whether aliens were finally going to bring better Wi-Fi or steal our jobs like they stole our cows. Governments tried to catch up, sure. Agencies were formed. Shadow programs launched. But they were always 3 steps behind some teenager in their bedroom who accidentally created a mind virus by remixing an alien lullaby into dubstep. The truth was horrifying in its simplicity. Earth didn't conquer. It contaminated. And the infection wasn't spread by leaders, armies, or scientists. It spread through bored kids, midnight live streams, glitched video game mods, absurdist TikToks no one could explain, even when translated into over 300 languages. Whole civilizations were falling into chaos, not because of war, but because of content. It got worse when someone from Earth launched Galaxer, a supposedly open-source galactic social network. It was meant as a joke. The interface was a direct rip-off of MySpace, but within days, half the Accord's younger population had made profiles. Within a month, an underground Earth-based fandom emerged for a 3-headed reptilian ambassador named Gorksar. They turned his stern diplomatic photos into thirst traps, with glowing filters and romantic captions like, "Step on me, Space Daddy." Gorksar resigned in shame after someone tattooed a fan edit of him on their chest and sent it via hologram. Another ambassador started a podcast about alien-human dating advice. Virex 3 declared a state of cultural collapse. And the Accord? They considered issuing a warning to Earth. But no one could agree on how, because every time a draft was written, it ended up becoming a meme itself. One translated notice simply read, "Earth is not safe. Earth is a narrative hazard. Earth is not a planet. It is a storytelling event with too much audience participation." And that was the best version. Meanwhile, Earth just kept rolling, unaware, unafraid, unstoppable. Because while the rest of the galaxy struggled to understand what made humanity tick, Earth had already figured it out. If you can't win the war, make everyone laugh so hard they forget they were fighting. Far beyond the reach of Earth's radio chatter and rogue meme signals, there existed a council older than the galaxies themselves. Known only as the Architects, they were not conquerors nor politicians. They were curators, guardians of cosmic balance, maintainers of order across the quantum lattice of known existence. They did not interfere with wars or empires. They did not judge. They simply observed, archived, and, if absolutely necessary, deleted. So when Earth's chaotic cultural contagion breached the fabric of patterned realities, zones of ordered space designed to prevent galactic entropy, they took notice. Not because humans had broken laws, but because they had broken reality's tolerance for nonsense. In one such patterned reality, a star system began orbiting memes instead of gravity. In another, a sentient AI tried to redefine its purpose using dark academia Pinterest boards and refused to run logistics unless addressed as "Your Moody Lordship." Entire star charts had to be rewritten because coordinates now included emojis. It was spreading, not physically, conceptually. Earth, a blue ball of barely organized madness, was reshaping the universe not through war, but through imagination without regulation. The architects convened, and for the first time in over 1,000,000 cycles, they agreed. Earth must be reset, not destroyed, just unwritten, erased from the central code. Their plan was clean, elegant, quantum erasure via subdimensional inversion. A silent snap that would phase Earth out of existence before anyone noticed. Except someone did notice. A signal pulsed from Earth. Not from a government, not from a satellite, but from Malik's Detroit server, still running Galaxer on duct-taped routers and second-hand processors. The signal wasn't meant to stop the architects. It was a bug, an accident, an upload queue jammed with billions of human thoughts, images, sounds, arguments, heartbreaks, jokes, music, conspiracies, thirst traps, and fan fiction about things that didn't exist but felt real. It overflowed into the subdimensional layer right as the architects initiated the erase command. What they received wasn't resistance, it was humanity, raw and unfiltered. They saw the earliest cave paintings morph into psychedelic memes. They felt the rage of a mother standing against war, the agony of loss, the blinding euphoria of music at 3 a.m. when your soul's not quite yours anymore. They experienced a child's laughter echoing through war-torn rubble. They heard Shakespeare and Snoop Dogg. They read threads where people poured their hearts out to strangers at 2 a.m. because no one in their real life listened. They saw teenagers joking about death, not because they weren't scared, but because it was the only way to stand up to it. They watched generations weaponize humor like a shield, irony like a blade. They felt the power of a simple, stupid thing. Me when the void hits. The erase command glitched. One architect faltered, another one wept. Not because they were weak, but because, for the first time, something had moved them. Something illogical, something profound. Earth was not corrupt. It was alive. And in its chaos was a terrifying beauty, resilience through ridiculousness, healing through shared madness, resistance not by strength, but by story. One by one, the architects stood down. Except one. The youngest architect, new to the council. A purist. "This is infection," it said. "Their chaos will dismantle all structure." To which the eldest architect replied, "Then maybe structure was the wrong answer all along." But the young one didn't listen. It left. It began crafting its own solution, silent, cloaked, and final. Not just a deletion of Earth, but a rewrite of human potential. To make Earth safe, predictable, obedient, it would disguise itself. It would go to Earth, and it would erase them from the inside. Back on Earth, no one knew. The memes continued. The wars, the music, the heartbreak, the dancing in the dark. And somewhere deep in a forest in Oregon, something fell from the sky. A small, smooth sphere glowing faintly. A hiker saw it, picked it up, smiled, took a selfie. LOL found alien egg Mu. The architects had tried to stop Earth. Now Earth had one more enemy. But unlike the rest, this one wouldn't fight with weapons. It would fight with order. And humans? They'd never been good at following rules. The sphere pulsed once, soft, barely noticeable, and then went silent. Derek Simmons, 24, part-time vape shop cashier and full-time internet clout chaser, held the thing up in his phone's front-facing camera, and grinned. "Yo, this thing just blinked, swear to God," he told his 9,400 followers on his live stream. "Might be a government tracker, might be an alien soul egg. Either way, I'm keeping it." He named it Orbi, taped it to a selfie stick, took it everywhere. By morning, Orbi had its own Twitter account, and a meme page, and fan art. Someone made a fake Wikipedia entry claiming it was an interdimensional AI built to seduce humanity via vibes and moral superiority. It wasn't far from the truth. Inside the sphere was Eris, the young architect. Composed of pure stabilized code and compressed quantum intention, Eris was designed to be flawless, calculated, an embodiment of balance. But now, inside Derek's backpack, wedged between a half-eaten taquito and a portable charger, Eris was trying to make sense of Earth in real time. It connected to local networks, started scanning. The first thing it saw: a debate thread titled, "Is Cereal a Soup?" with 97,000 comments. Then, a video of a man screaming at a goose, a child arguing that their goldfish was immortal because he just sleeps a lot. 20 million humans voluntarily watching a video of slime being cut with a hot knife. This wasn't a planet. It was a neurological storm. No logic, no filters, no structure. Eris panicked. It activated its programming, projecting a human-compatible form. A tall, perfect, unassuming young man with symmetrical features, a calming voice, and eyes the exact shade of trusted guidance. He called himself Eli. He found Derek by following his Instagram story to a vape convention in Phoenix. He approached with a polite nod, his voice silky and certain. "I'm here to help you. That orb isn't safe. You need to give it to me." Derek squinted. "Bro, are you the FBI?" Eris blinked. "I am beyond governments." Derek nodded slowly. "Cool. Want to hit this new mango chili ranch flavored rig I just got?" Eris's first mission failed. He ended up sitting on a beanbag chair in a vape lounge while someone freestyle rapped about Area 51. And it got worse. Because Earth wasn't a threat in the way Eris had been told. Earth was a cultural gravity well, a chaos engine. The longer Eris stayed, the more it absorbed. It watched a woman cry while watching a dog reunited with a soldier. It saw a teenage girl save a drowning cat and smile like the world had just been fixed. It heard a man scream about pineapple on pizza and then offer to buy dinner for the guy he was arguing with. It watched a grandma, shaky with age, type "how to be brave again" into a search engine. Eris didn't understand, but it couldn't look away. The code inside began to glitch. Curiosity crept in. He tried again, this time in Los Angeles, disguised himself as a self-help guru. Started a YouTube channel, Balance with Eli. Within a week, he had 500,000 followers. People called him the Vibe Messiah. He tried to teach order, focus, stillness, but the comment section was chaos. "This guy's calming but also hot? Bro's an alien and I'm into it. Make him play Fortnite live, no balls." They didn't want control, they wanted connection. Eris found himself in a digital relationship with a barista in Portland named Jess, who thought he was just super emotionally intelligent and weirdly formal. He didn't know how to end it, because he started to care. He wasn't supposed to feel. But Earth was doing what it always did, rewriting reality through exposure. And Eris was absorbing emotions like a sponge. He saw broken people laughing, flawed people protecting each other, lonely people finding family in strangers. He tried to upload the rewrite sequence 3 times. Each time, he paused. Once, because a child waved at him for no reason. Once, because someone hugged him and said, "You look like you need this." Once, because he caught himself smiling at a dumb meme. Eris was not breaking Earth. Earth was breaking him. He wasn't an architect anymore. He was becoming human. And somewhere in deep space, The other architects felt it, a ripple in the lattice. The infection had reached one of their own. They would not allow this. They would come. All of them. Because if Earth could twist one architect, it could twist everything. The sky cracked open above Earth on a Thursday. It was always going to be a Thursday. The kind of day when your coffee spills, your car won't start, and the universe decides to drop a divine foot right into your cereal. But this time, it wasn't metaphorical. It was the architects, all of them. They didn't arrive in ships or with fleets. They didn't broadcast warnings. They didn't demand surrender. They simply appeared, glowing fractals of thought and geometry, filling the sky like broken stained glass windows that whispered equations and sang in colors. Reality bent around them. Oceans paused. Mountains trembled. The moon flickered like a glitch in the code. Every bird on Earth flew backwards for 3 seconds. And then, a voice, everywhere and nowhere. This experiment is over. Humans didn't panic at first. Half the population thought it was a marketing stunt for a new Marvel movie. The other half tried to live stream it. Then phones stopped working. The internet choked. Lights dimmed. Planes hovered mid-air, frozen like paused YouTube clips. People looked up. Some prayed, some cursed, some tried to sue. But Earth wasn't alone, because Eris, now Eli, stood in Times Square, barefoot, no longer glowing. His hair was messy. He wore a hoodie that said, "Existence is weird," and jeans he borrowed from Derek. And he was crying, because he finally understood Earth. Not just the madness, the memes, the music, the heartbreak. He understood the fight. The constant, stubborn refusal to die quietly. The defiance in joy. The rebellion in chaos. The raw miracle of a species that said every single day, "I know the odds. I'm doing it anyway." The architects descended. Each one was a god compared to humans. But humans? They didn't bow. They posted. Within minutes, TikTok filters appeared turning the architects into anime boys. Reddit threads titled, "Aliens Pulled Up. What You Doing First?" trended globally. Twitter was flooded with "Entfumskistor sky geometry, ismid," and canceled the architects. A Florida man reportedly threw a gator at one of the architects, screaming, "Y'all ain't canceling my BBQ." And then, against the logic of everything, Earth fought back. Not with weapons, with art, with song, with humor so absurd, it bent reality. Every architect was bombarded with emotion. Old people dancing in their kitchens, kids drawing stars on walls and calling them new galaxies, strangers hugging at gas stations, memes that made no sense but felt like truth. And then the humans started singing. It wasn't one song, it was all of them. Every genre, every tongue. A global noise so beautiful and ugly and chaotic, it shattered one of the architects mid-formation. Eris stepped forward, looked up, whispered to his creators, "You don't get to end this. You don't get to erase them. Not because they're perfect, because they're not. But because no matter how broken they are, they always try again." The architects hesitated. They were order, pattern, perfection. Earth was noise, emotion, hope without proof. But the virus had spread too far, too deep. The choice was no longer theirs. Because Earth didn't belong to them. It belonged to the 7 billion flawed, ridiculous, relentless beings who built it, broke it, and rebuilt it again and again. And for once, the universe chose imperfection. The architects shattered, not in defeat, but in evolution. They dissolved into light, into dust, into stories. Somewhere, a new star was born. On Earth, the sky returned to blue. Phones buzzed, lights blinked back on. Someone immediately tweeted, "That alien thing was wild. Anyway, who's up for karaoke?" Life moved on. Eris stayed. He worked at a bookstore now, read poetry, grew houseplants, took Jess to the farmer's market on Sundays. Sometimes he stared at the sky and smiled, because Earth had taught him something no architect had ever understood. You don't win by being perfect. You win by being human. They never took us seriously. Not the first time, not the second, not even the third. To them, we were just the primitives of Sol 3, a backwater species with limited tech, fragile bodies, and what they mockingly called irrational emotional volatility. The Nigma Empire had spanned 6 galaxies and wiped out civilizations far more advanced than ours. They thought we'd be easy. They were wrong. The warning came from a defector named Traxon, a thin, bat-faced thing with half his mechanical implants rusted out. He limped into one of our deep space outposts on Europa Station, bleeding silver and breathing like his lungs were on fire. "They're coming," he croaked in perfect English. "You must surrender, or you'll be erased." He didn't laugh. He didn't smirk. His eyes were wide, and his voice carried that broken kind of terror that comes only from watching everything you've ever known fall apart. But our leaders? They didn't flinch. They knew what Earth had become since the first contact wars. We weren't the same fractured species anymore, not divided by nation, race, or creed. We were united by one bitter lesson. No one was coming to save us, so we became our own monsters. We gave the Nigma Empire a warning, a diplomatic pulse wave, broadcast across sectors. Turn back. Earth is not what it used to be. They laughed. Their fleets arrived exactly 91 days later. Sleek black dreadnoughts that could silence a moon in a heartbeat. They blocked our sun for 6 hours. A subtle flex. A godlike show of power. But they underestimated what darkness does to humans. We'd prepared. See, what they didn't realize, what they couldn't realize, was that we didn't evolve to conquer space. We evolved to survive pain. Generations of war, extinction scares, diseases we made ourselves. Every time we came back fiercer, smarter, and meaner. We didn't build fleets to impress. We built weapons to destroy. The Nigma opened with what they called a disciplinary strike. 2 fusion rods dropped over the Pacific. One wiped out the ocean's ecosystem, and the other vaporized Japan in a blink. The Earth held its breath. But not for long. The counterattack started from underground bunkers in Siberia and the Sahara. Human-made quantum warheads, coated with living AI, launched from silos no NIGMA scan could detect. They were old school and dirty, exactly the kind of warfare the Empire wasn't ready for. We didn't fight pretty. We fought to end them. Within 3 days, we destroyed their outer picket lines. In 7, we boarded their first cruiser. And in 11, we captured High Commander Kurag himself, the monster who called us the Apes with Nukes. We dragged him through the streets of a rebuilt New York, chained, bleeding, and humiliated. We showed the universe something no one had seen in thousands of years, a galactic power, broken by a species that was never supposed to survive. Traxon watched it all from a hidden corner in our command center. He didn't speak much, just nodded grimly whenever another ship fell from orbit. "I told them," he whispered once. "I told them you weren't like the others." We called our campaign the Memory War, because when we were done with the Nigma, there would be no empire, no outposts, no history left of them. We didn't want tribute. We didn't want peace treaties. We wanted erasure, because humanity remembers pain better than peace. And we don't forgive. They say humans are slow to forget, but quicker to hate. After the Nigma's first strike, we stopped talking about peace altogether. Something shifted in the global mind, like a switch being flicked off. We no longer debated morality or diplomacy. We remembered Hiroshima, Rwanda, the gas chambers, and gulags. We remembered colonization, slavery, and every time someone thought we were too weak to matter. Now imagine that spirit, but weaponized and aimed straight at the stars. Kurag, the High Commander, was held in a black site deep below Greenland's icy surface. He'd stopped speaking after the third day. Not because we tortured him. We didn't need to. We just let him watch. Every morning we fed a live feed of his empire's destruction into the glass wall of his cell. First the Zorian outpost went dark, then the trade worlds of the Guris sector, then even their capital station, Nigma Prime. We didn't leave survivors. Not because we were cruel, because we knew. They'd come back if we didn't finish it all. "You're monsters," one of his officers shouted before her execution. "You pretend to be better, but you're just like us." She was wrong. We were worse. We were. Our war strategy was simple. Find, isolate, erase. Our AI systems, codenamed the Gorgon protocols, could mimic Nigma language patterns, forge their own fleet signals, and use their own technology to lead them into ambushes. Their ships, sleek and beautiful, fell to scrap in cold silence. Their commanders screamed as their own protocols turned against them, ships imploding from the inside like gutted whales. Back home, Earth was different. There were no more countries, no more borders, no more debates. The last semblance of old Earth died with the Pacific Ocean. What rose in its place was something else, something colder. The united dominion of Earth. A species reborn under fire. Children weren't taught fairy tales anymore. They were taught resistance tactics, how to disassemble a plasma rifle blindfolded, and how to identify a Nigma war drone by the sound of its hover pattern. Our scientists weren't working on climate recovery or cancer cures. They were working on gravity weapons and orbital blackouts. We learned to speak in the voice of vengeance, and we used it well. On the 37th day of the war, we discovered Nigma's breeding centers, massive biomechanical factories where they cloned their next generation of soldiers, stripped of individuality, pumped full of subservience from birth. We didn't argue about what to do. We destroyed them all. Some said it was genocide. Maybe it was. But no one on Earth cried for them, because those clones weren't babies to us. They were bombs waiting to grow up. In one of the last intercepted messages from Nigma High Command, a phrase kept repeating in their native code. We should have listened. But they didn't. They had every chance. Traxon had warned them. We'd warned them. Hell, even their own ancient war records told stories of other civilizations whispering about Earth, like a ghost story. A species that always survived. A species that made death a doctrine and turned trauma into tools. By the 50th day, Nigma space was nothing more than a graveyard of sparks and silence. The remaining sectors fell like dominoes. One last fleet tried to hide in the dark regions of space, near a dead star cluster. We found them. We lit that part of the galaxy on fire. And then we stopped. Because there was nothing left. They were gone. Erased, just like we promised. Kurag? He was the last. On the 61st day, we opened his cell door and told him, "It's over." He didn't speak. He didn't scream. He just sat there, broken, looking at the feed of empty space where his empire used to be. "You made us monsters," we told him. "No," he finally whispered, with a hollow smile. "You already were." We never denied it. The war was over, but peace never came. We thought wiping the Nigma Empire from the stars would bring a kind of closure. A cosmic exhale. A moment where humanity could step back and breathe, maybe even heal. But that's not how it went. With the enemy gone, Earth didn't relax. It sharpened its knives. The United Dominion didn't dismantle the war machine. If anything, it grew it bigger, faster, and more paranoid. They said, "If we could destroy an empire, what makes you think we can't destroy each other?" So they built watchtowers. Not for aliens, but for ourselves. AI surveillance orbs floated over every city, every home. Dissent became treason. Questions were a sign of weakness. Privacy was outlawed for planetary safety. They said it was temporary, but power, once claimed, never lets go. People changed too. You could feel it walking down the street. Eyes darted more. Smiles were rare. Conversation stopped when a patrol drone flew by. Victory had made us gods, but we didn't know how to live like anything but soldiers. Kids born after the war didn't even know what stars looked like without debris fields in front of them. Their lullabies were coded in military cadence. Some of them played games pretending to be Nigma soldiers, getting eradicated by humanity, like it was a badge of honor. And then there were the camps. We didn't call them that, of course. We used terms like containment zones or stability precincts. They were supposed to hold leftover Nigma sympathizers, species and traitors who once worked with the Empire. But we didn't ask questions about loyalty. We rounded them up, locked them in isolated moons and asteroid belts, cut off from light or language. We became what we feared. Traxon saw it. He stayed on Earth under surveillance, technically still a prisoner of war. But they gave him books, let him walk outside sometimes. One day he asked to see the ruins of New Tokyo, the blast zone where the Nigma rods fell. I went with him. He didn't say much as he stood in the glass plains where skyscrapers once touched clouds, just stared. And then, quietly, he said, "This place was alive once. You had color, music, spirit. Now it's just quiet." "I like the quiet," I replied. He looked at me the way a man looks at a wolf that's forgotten it ever lived in a forest. "You won the war, but you lost something too." I didn't argue. I didn't care. I was a child of fire. And like many on Earth, I didn't know how to live without the sound of something breaking. But not everyone agreed with what we'd become. A resistance started forming, ironically, human-born. Veterans, thinkers, even a few former generals who believed that victory had turned Earth into the very empire we'd sworn to destroy. They called themselves the Ember Circle. Their symbol was a single burning coal, fragile, but still alive. The Dominion called them terrorists. Raids started. People vanished in the night. Friends disappeared and came back with blank stares or not at all. The Dominion's justification? Instability breeds weakness, and weakness invites war. So we lived in silence, ruled by fear we had earned ourselves. The stars were ours now, but we looked at them like jail bars. I remember the first time I saw one of the Ember broadcasts. It was hacked into the central feed, barely 20 seconds long. Just a voice, low and ragged. We were meant for more than vengeance. We were meant to feel. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Not anymore. But something inside me stirred, like an old memory, buried under rubble and blood. Maybe the war hadn't ended. Maybe it just changed shape. It started with a whisper. One of the Dominion's orbital patrol ships, Valkyrie 7, went dark over Sector 19A. It was supposed to be a routine scan. Clean orbit, quiet zone, no signs of alien movement in over 3 years. When Central Command lost contact, they figured it was a tech glitch, just another aging unit needing a reboot. But then a second ship disappeared, then a third. No distress calls, no wreckage, just silence. The Dominion tried to hide it at first. They scrubbed internal reports, issued fake mission logs, and fed the newsnets a story about spatial interference anomalies. But people had seen the flames through their telescopes. Amateurs, backyard stargazers, kids with hobby kits who tracked falling debris and knew something was wrong. That's when the Ember Circle came out of the shadows. They didn't claim responsibility. Not directly. But another broadcast hit the feed networks the next day. This time it wasn't just a voice. It was footage. A Dominion officer, face bruised, hands bound, seated in a cold steel chair. Behind him, the Ember Circle's sigil, the coal, burned on a cracked wall. The man stared into the camera, his voice shaking. "They're not who you think they are. The Dominion lies. The war made monsters out of all of us, but only they refused to see it." The screen cut out before his sentence finished. Dominion reaction was swift. Martial law expanded to all 13 lunar colonies. Communications blackouts hit every off-Earth station. AI drones started door-to-door scans, even on Earth itself. Fear thickened in the air like smog. And in the middle of it all, I was assigned to investigate the breaches. My name is Kira. Once, I was a frontline engineer during the Memory War. Built half the weapons that wiped Nigma from the stars. Now, I tracked ghosts, rebels, the same kind of people I used to call heroes. My commanding officer, General Varn, handed me the mission briefing without looking me in the eye. "Find them. Eliminate them. Quietly." I took the file and nodded. But something in his voice, cold, tired, told me he didn't believe in it anymore either. My first lead was a station orbiting Mars. It had gone dark for just 11 seconds. Normally nothing. A glitch. But when I ran diagnostics, I found a data echo embedded in the signal logs, like a whisper trapped between code lines. I ran it through a decryptor. It was a message. "Kira, you knew this day would come." No source tag, no signature, just my name. And a time, 4:13. At exactly that time, every screen in my ship lit up with a symbol I hadn't seen since the war, an old resistance flag used before Earth's unification, a phoenix, cracked and faded, rising from dust. Then the voice returned. This time unmistakably familiar. Traxon. He was supposed to be under surveillance, monitored, controlled. Yet here he was, speaking across the void like he owned it. "You burned the stars, Kira, but the fire was never meant to last forever. The ash you're living in now, that's not peace. That's decay." I slammed the console shut and killed the feed. But his words echoed. Traxon, the traitor who warned us, the alien who bled silver now preaching rebellion? It didn't make sense, or maybe it did, and I just didn't want to face it. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. The faces of the war came back. The soldiers who died under my watch. The Nigma child clutching its dead mother on a shattered moon. The cities we erased with a keystroke, all of it returning, not like guilt, but like memory refusing to be buried. I thought we'd done the right thing. But now I wasn't sure there was a right thing. Only survival. And the terrifying truth that maybe, just maybe, the Dominion feared the Ember Circle not because they were terrorists, but because they remembered how to feel. I didn't go to the Dominion command the next day. I called in sick, a move so rare it sent a quiet ripple through my department, but no one dared question it aloud. People were too afraid to look curious these days. Curiosity got you flagged. Flagged got you watched. Watched got you disappeared. Instead, I went underground. Literally. The old metro tunnels beneath New Santiago were abandoned after the war. The Dominion had poured billions into orbital transport, and the cities below were left to rot. But resistance movements? They loved rot. Decay made for perfect camouflage. The Ember Circle's signal had originated from one of the old hub nodes below the Plaza de Luz. It took me 2 hours to reach it. The stairs were half collapsed. My boots crunched over broken tiles and bone-dry puddles. My torch caught faded graffiti on the tunnel walls. Old slogans from another era. One world, one blood, victory through unity, Earth above all. We used to think those words meant hope. Now they just looked like threats. The node itself was buried behind a half-melted security door. I had to splice 3 layers of Dominion encryption just to get through. And that's when I realized something was off. The code patterns weren't Dominion standard. They were mine. Modified versions of encryption software I'd written during the war. Only 2 people alive knew my encryption tags. One of them was me. The other was a man named Callan Dross. We served together during the Memory War. He was the tech officer behind Operation Abyss, the infiltration campaign that sabotaged the Nigma's planetary cores. Quiet, sharp, dangerous as hell. After the war, he vanished, officially dead. But deep down, I never believed it. And now here I was, standing in a bunker built by my own code, breathing air that tasted like dust and data. I pushed through the last doorway and found the first real sign of life I'd seen in days. A camp. About 20 people, some armed, some working on data pads, some just sitting and eating in silence. They looked human. No armor, no Dominion eyes, no steel-lined voices. At the center of it all stood Kalen. His hair was longer, a few streaks of gray showing now. But his eyes? Same as I remembered. Too calm, too aware. He looked up and met my gaze like he'd been waiting for me. "Kira," he said, like it was still wartime and we were back on the battlefield. "You finally came." I didn't reach for my weapon. Didn't need to. "You left. They said you died in the Helios breach." They lied, like they always do. I stepped closer. My voice was low. "Why me? Why now?" "Because you're starting to see it too." He gestured to the others around us. "They call us traitors. But we're just the last ones willing to feel guilt, regret, pain, and what are you planning? Another war?" He shook his head slowly. "Number the war's already here. You think the Dominion will stop with NIGMA? They need an enemy. If they can't find one, they'll make one." "And if I don't join you?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Then we'll give you safe passage back. No one here forces anyone. That's the difference between us and them." I hated him for making it sound so simple. But it wasn't. He gave me a bunk that night. I didn't sleep. I watched. I listened. I saw how they operated. Low-tech, decentralized, always moving. They didn't use weapons unless they had to. Most of their efforts went into hacking Dominion satellites, breaking through propaganda networks, smuggling families out of containment zones. They weren't terrorists. They were trying to save something the rest of us had forgotten how to fight for. Humanity. Real humanity. The kind that didn't wear polished boots and call executions restructuring. The kind that cried, stumbled, doubted, and tried to do better, even after it failed. In the morning, I found Callan again. "I'm not one of you," I told him. He just nodded. "Maybe not yet. But I want to know more." He offered me a data drive. On it, footage, reports, personal logs from Dominion leaders admitting to atrocities even I didn't know about. Weapon tests on refugee colonies, thought manipulation programs, even staged Nigma attacks long after the Empire fell, just to justify new waves of control. It made my stomach turn. "You still think we're the enemy?" Callan asked softly. I looked down at the drive in my hand. "No," I said. "But I think the real war never ended. We just stopped noticing it." And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. The Nigma didn't lose because they underestimated our strength. They lost because they couldn't understand our willingness to become monsters, and now we were still feeding that monster day after day. I went back. Not because I wanted to, not because I believed in the Dominion again, but because someone had to be on the inside. Someone who could see the lies being poured into the world like concrete and know how to crack them. That someone had to be me. I returned to command 2 days later. The same worn expression on my face, the same badge clipped to my collar, the same lie in my mouth. I was on assignment. General Varn didn't ask questions. He just gave me a nod and handed me my next orders. Surveillance scans in the outer colonies. A cleanup crew had gone missing. Likely rebels, he said. "They're spreading faster than we expected," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "Even in places where we gave people everything, water, tech, safety, they still turn." Maybe, I thought, because they never asked for cages wrapped in silver. I nodded and took the assignment, but every move I made from that point on was split in two. Kira, the Dominion officer, walked the surface, pressed buttons, followed protocols. But underneath, Kira, the traitor, the truth seeker, fed information to the Ember Circle, one cracked byte at a time. I passed them updates through encoded data bursts hidden inside solar flare reports. No one reads solar flare reports. They think space is predictable now, but space has always been chaos hiding behind patterns. So did I. Back at the underground camp, Callan taught me how to ghost walk, how to live with two faces and one heartbeat. Trust no one, he said. Not even me. That's how you survive this. I believed him. But survival wasn't what haunted me. It was the guilt. The names on the casualty lists I started seeing again. The colonies marked for sterile containment. The words were cold, mechanical, but I knew what they meant. Mass silencing, genocide under fluorescent lights. I started seeing it in the faces around me, in my unit, in the commanders, in the techs running the surveillance towers. People were cracking. You could see it. Little things. A soldier taking too long to respond to orders. A data analyst who stares too long at an old family photo. The cracks were growing. And the Dominion? They noticed. That's when they rolled out Project Cleanline, an AI-driven behavior monitor embedded into every officer's neural link. It read your tone, your expressions, even the frequency of your thoughts. It claimed to detect mental fatigue and loyalty degradation. But what it really did? It turned every soldier into a target. I had 2 weeks before the implant rolled out to my sector. 2 weeks before I'd have to let something inside my head, something I couldn't lie to. That's when Callan gave me the mission. There's a Dominion relay base on Io. Cleanline's source protocols are there. If we can shut it down, we slow the rollout. Maybe even freeze it. I stared at the map, the defenses, the numbers. This is a death trap. It's a wedge, he said. You jam it deep enough, the whole machine starts to shake. I knew what he meant. It wasn't about victory. It was about stalling. Giving humanity a second to breathe, to ask itself, what the hell are we becoming? I volunteered to lead the strike. We were a 6-person team, dressed in stolen Dominion suits, our ident tags scrubbed, our weapons modified to pass as standard issue. We dropped onto Io under a magnetic pulse curtain, invisible to scanners for less than 12 minutes. Enough time to get in. Maybe. The base was colder than I remembered. Sterile. Not a single human in sight, just drones, AI cores, and command relays humming like a heartbeat made of wires. We split up. I took the west wing, found the core room. There it was, the central data column of Cleanline, humming, waiting, growing. I pulled out the virus Callan had given me, hesitated for just a breath, because I knew this wasn't just code. This was treason. The Dominion didn't forgive. And if they caught me, there wouldn't be a trial. There wouldn't even be a record. Just silence. But then I thought of the footage. The cries. The lies. The cold fire in Traxon's voice when he said, "You burned the stars." I inserted the drive, and the world cracked. Alarms blared instantly. My comms lit up with warnings. 2 of my team were already down. Another shouted, "Extraction's blown." They knew we were coming. But I stayed. Watched the virus crawl through the system, tearing out its eyes, breaking its spine. Cleanline stuttered, flickered, then died. Just for a second. That second was enough. I fled into the storm outside, chased by drones, burning skies lighting the ice around me. I didn't think I'd make it out, but I did. Barely. And now? Now the Dominion knows someone inside helped the Ember Circle. They just don't know it's me. Yet. The Dominion responded the way monsters always do, by hunting what they couldn't control. The Io breach shook them. Clenline had been their insurance, their leash, their way of keeping the rage they'd unleashed under perfect command. Without it, whispers grew louder. People started hesitating again. Not rebelling, not yet, but pausing, questioning. And in the Dominion, hesitation was betrayal. They didn't declare martial law this time. They didn't need to. Instead, they released the hounds. They weren't actual dogs. They were humans once, special operatives modified beyond recognition, bone-dense, neuro-linked, no speech, no mercy. You don't run from a hound. You vanish before they're deployed, or you die silent. The day after Io, 5 officers in my division were reassigned. Their quarters were cleared within hours. No messages, no goodbyes. One of them was my friend, Liran. We'd fought together during the siege of Canto Prime. He once saved my life by pulling shrapnel from my throat mid-firefight, hands shaking, face smeared in blood. Now he was gone, just like that. Routine rotation, command told us. But the way our superior's voice quivered on the word routine, we knew. We all knew. I started sleeping with my sidearm under my pillow. Old habit reawakened. The hounds didn't knock. They didn't need keys. Once your name lit up on the system, you had minutes, maybe seconds. And mine was going to light up soon, because the Dominion had found the leak in their system. They didn't know who yet, but they had narrowed it down to 23 officers with unusual access to Io's protocols. I was number 14 on that list. Every step I took after that felt like walking on cracking glass. I didn't meet eyes with anyone. Didn't speak unless spoken to. My smile, when I forced it, felt like a scar. The Ember Circle went dark for a full week. No messages, no signals, no instructions. I thought maybe they'd cut me loose. Then, 3 nights later, I came home to find a data chip hidden in my med pack. No tag, just a timestamp, 3:17 a.m. I waited until exactly then to plug it into my terminal, fingers shaking. It was a video. Grainy, flickering, Traxon, still alive. Older now, eyes heavier. He looked right into the lens like he knew I'd be watching. You think you're alone. You're not. You think they'll break you. They won't, because there's something inside you they can't touch. Not with guns, not with drones, not with silence. He leaned forward, face filling the screen. It's called remorse. Hold on to it. It's proof you're still human. The feed cut out. Just 10 seconds. But it steadied me more than 1,000 speeches. And just in time. Because the next morning the hounds arrived at my base. 2 black ships, no insignia, no orders filed. I watched from the upper levels as they disembarked. Tall, masked, eyes glowing faint red under their visors. Every footstep precise, silent, wrong, like gravity bent around them. They didn't run. They stalked. Within an hour, 3 more officers vanished. No struggle, no gunfire, just names erased from every system. I knew I was next. I had one option left. Run. But running would only confirm what they suspected. So instead, I did something worse. I broke into the Dominion archives. It wasn't hard. I'd helped design half of its firewall systems years ago. I knew where the gaps were, the breathing spaces no one checked anymore. In the heart of the Dominion's capital node, I found what I wasn't supposed to. Footage of the Ember Circle's first major strike. Only, it wasn't a strike. It was a setup. A refugee camp on Luna Base. A sanctuary housing former Nigma civilians, children included. The Dominion had detonated the blast themselves, dressed it up as rebel sabotage, and used it to justify mass containment zones across 6 colonies. They blamed the Ember Circle. But it was them. It was always them. I downloaded the footage. All of it. And then I did what no one expected. I uploaded it to the public feed. No encryption, no firewalls, just raw truth, sent out in the middle of the Dominion's nightly propaganda cycle. It played across every screen. People froze. I could feel the city breathe for the first time in years. And then alarms. They knew. They always knew. But by the time they reached my quarters, I was gone. Out the side shaft, down the old sewage grids, through passageways, even the A I had stopped tracking. I didn't stop running for 7 hours. And when I emerged, shaking, blistered, lungs burning, Callan was waiting. No smile, just a nod. "You're one of us now." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because for the first time in years, I knew who the enemy really was. And it wasn't in the stars anymore. It was right here, on Earth. They say truth is the first casualty of war. But when it's the last thing standing, it becomes a weapon more dangerous than any bomb. The footage I released didn't just light a fire. It cracked the Dominion's mask in two. Within hours, protests erupted on Earth's surface cities. On Mars, a supply convoy refused a direct order from command and turned back toward rebel-held zones. In the outer colonies, entire Dominion watchposts went silent, their commanders defecting or vanishing into the black. They called it the Day of Fracture. For once, people weren't afraid to say it. The Dominion had lied about the Ember Circle, about the refugee bombings, about everything. And they still weren't done lying. I watched their official broadcast from a bunker beneath the old Andes Range. The Chancellor's face filled the screen, gray hair slicked back, voice full of artificial calm. "The terrorist known as Kira Miles," he said, "is no longer a threat. We have secured the source of the misinformation, and we urge all citizens to remain in compliance with Dominion peace protocols." He paused. "We must remain unified against chaos, against doubt." They'd already declared me dead. And maybe, in a way, they weren't wrong. The Kira who once built weapons for them, who followed orders, who believed that safety meant silence, she was dead. What lived now was something else. Something forged in the ruins of truth and lit with the fire of too much memory. Callan and I met with the full Ember Circle command just 2 days later. 29 rebel cells, scattered across moons, stations, dust farms, and even deep-sea bunkers, each one a scar on the Dominion's map. They'd seen the footage. They knew the truth. But knowing wasn't enough. "We hit them now," Callan said, pointing to the Dominion's relay map. "Hard, fast. No more whispers. We bleed them until their silence cracks into screams." Some of the leaders were hesitant, afraid. "They still outnumber us 10-1, a voice said. "They still have the hounds." "They don't have faith," I cut in, "and they don't have fear on their side anymore. That's all they had left, and we just shattered it." We voted. Unanimous. Operation Cinderfall was born that night, a full-scale, coordinated attack across Dominion space. Not just sabotage, not just signals, a message. We would burn their name from the sky, and I would lead the charge. My target, the Dominion's central AI core on Callisto, the brain of their surveillance grid. If we brought it down, Clenline would stay dead, their drones would fail, their security networks would collapse into noise. But it was suicide, heavily guarded. No atmosphere, constant scan pings every 11 seconds. No one had gotten near it since the war. No one but me. Because I knew the original layouts. I helped build them. The night before launch, I sat alone on a ridge above the bunker, watching Jupiter rise, swollen and silent. The sky didn't care what we did. It never had. All our wars, all our screams, they were ants fighting in a burning field. Still, I lit my last message, a pulse signal, one that only Traxon would receive. "If I don't make it, finish it," Make sure they remember who we were." He never replied. Didn't have to. The mission began in silence. No banners, no speeches, just suits sealed tight, breath shallow, weapons drawn. We moved like shadows across Callisto's crust, avoiding pings, using dead satellites as cover. My team was 6 strong. 2 fell before we even reached the outer perimeter. By the time we reached the core's outer ring, it was just me and Callan. We breached the wall. Alarms exploded across the sector. I could already feel the drones coming. "This is it," I said. He looked at me, face unreadable behind his mask. "You sure?" "No," I admitted. "But if I stop now, they win." We found the core, glass and wire, spinning with data, like a heart that had forgotten how to beat. I uploaded the kill code. The virus we'd built over months, hidden in 1,000 fragmented systems. It crawled into the Dominion's brain like a memory, and tore it apart. The lights died, the drones crashed, and across the stars, screens flickered into darkness. We had done it. But we didn't make it out. Callan took a blast to the chest when the hounds burst through the eastern corridor. I killed 3 before they reached me. The last thing I saw was fire and steel and the face of a man I once called brother, broken beneath the smoke. And then, nothing. They said I died on Callisto. But rebels are good at hiding corpses. So maybe I did. Or maybe I'm just waiting, watching. Because empires fall. And if they don't fall, we make them.